yes, he's mean sometimes, but then he's really nice to you for a few days afterwards. That's abuse, guys. Hi guys, it's Sarah. Welcome back to another video here on my channel. I hope you're doing well. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Okay, why are we discussing a new show on the TVD channel? But I don't know what to tell you, babes, because here we are. Just to make it so abundantly clear, I have so many issues with Ryan Murphy. Countless issues with that man. He's on my list, and it's not a good list that he is on, okay? I don't like him at all. He gives me the creeps. Most of his body of work gives me the creeps. American Horror Story is no exception. There's elements to it where I'm like, dude, why are we doing that? But the first like 3 seasons, as everybody says, are just so good. You can kind of overlook the things that are like, ugh. I rewatch those first 3 seasons quite often. The first one probably the most, because Murder House is just like a lightning in a bottle season of TV. It's so good in so many ways. And this year, back in the fall, I convinced my husband to start watching it with me, and he loved it. So now he's hooked too, and we're really working through it. We're gonna try really hard, and I think we're gonna be able to get through everything, because season 13 is coming out this fall now. So it's just like the perfect time to be talking about this, you know? I'm thinking about these characters a lot more. We're all about to start rewatching and getting ready, so I hope you guys are down for a little conversation today. I really do love nothing more than like flexing my personality disorder knowledge. It's been a special interest for me my entire life. I've known and loved quite a few people with PDs in my life. A few of them, I'm not gonna say who, since childhood. So while I'm not an expert by any means, I do tend to bring a certain like, oops, I saw behind the mask quality to things that they just hate to see coming. So whenever I get to like deep dive on characters like this, oh, I just have the best time. And this script has been in the works since the fall. It's 25 pages right now. So it's become one of those videos where I was like, I just need to sit down and start filming. Yes, I'm gonna think of more stuff to say, just like with the Gemini Coven video and the Bennett video. It's the era of long form videos on my channel, okay? So just buckle up, get a snack, and let's get into things. Tate and Violet are truly one of my like OG toxic couples. I love them both individually and then together so much. I think that their relationship is actually like a really good look at this dynamic in media, especially because of the way the breakup goes down and what they go through together and apart. And it's surprising, given how I feel about Ryan Murphy, that it does go down the way it does, but I think it really speaks to Taissa and Evan and like how they present the characters to us. So in this video, we're gonna deep dive into both of them as characters and how their personalities and choices influence the relationship as a whole. There will be a ton of spoilers. So if you somehow haven't seen season 1 and season 8, this might not be the video for you. While I think Tate is quite a bit more complex than I think some people tend to dive in on, it's okay to just like bad characters. If you've spent any time on my channel, then I fear it's abundantly clear that I love rooting for the characters that we're not supposed to be rooting for. I like the dogs that bite, and I'm not gonna apologize for that. This is my house. You'll never catch me judging somebody for liking who they like unless you like really and truly like Kai Anderson, in which case, come to the principal's office, please. We need to discuss a few things. On that note, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I really hate the phrase, you think you can fix him. Because when I start liking these characters, I am drawn to them exactly as they are. I see that he's a gremlin and I think I can work with that, okay? Please move along if you're worried about getting blood on your shoes. But I also have my limits on that kind of behavior and personality type. So one of the things that I love so much about Tate and Violet specifically is that they break up. And they break up for a long time, and she is the one to walk away from him. You almost never see this type of dynamic crash out in a non-violent way. And I remember seeing it for the first time as a, like, I was gonna say kid, but teenager. I watched it for the first time in like 2013. And the other thing there, I was in a vulnerable place. Okay, the first time that I saw Tate Langdon on my screen. So it's no wonder I'm a little bit more attached to him than I probably should be, okay? But I saw that for the first time, the breakup scene played out, and I remember thinking to myself like, oh my God, that's an option, because typically men in his situation get violent, and he does with everybody but her. So there are so many people out there who really, really romanticize this ship and Tate in general. And I remember like kind of going to Tumblr after watching it for the first time and being really surprised by the amount of people that hate Violet or get mad at Violet for walking away from him, even though he is actively the abuser. He is abusing her repeated for months. And it boggled my mind because I personally love the collapse itself and the softer goodbye scene, like when they do actually get to have a little bit of closure together. Even though it hurts every time I watched it, I vividly remember seeing that for the first time and just sobbing with Tate and being like, you ruined it, you dumbass, you'll never get her back. There's just something so healing though about watching Violet walk away from him, and the fact that she's strong enough to say goodbye even though she still loves him. Like, we know that in the moment. But even now, in the year of our Lord 2026, photos of Tate looking like this, and like, listen, side note, Evan Peters, that is my man. Okay, that's been my man since 2004. All right, I saw this movie and I thought to myself, yeah, that's the one for me. And I've been rocking with him ever since. Okay, so Tate, I get it, right? He's gorgeous. I understand where we're coming from. But then they caption it with like, I want someone to love me the way Tate loves Violet. Are you sure about that? Are you positive? Because once you've had a Tate in your life, it gets really hard to romanticize his behavior, okay? It gets really icky. And you're like, oh, actually, maybe you need to be institutionalized. Maybe that would help. I don't think I can give you what you need. I think you need doctors. Like a team of them, and medication probably. And I mean, characters like this that have those narcissistic personality traits, they go from, you know, the relatively harmless stuff over here to this absolute nightmare fuel in the blink of an eye, babes. And the real scary thing is like even the cute ones turn into this when they're provoked, right? They all have this lurking in them. And when you look at people over here on this side of the spectrum, they're still doing the same cruel bullshit, okay? They just pretend to be kind to you first. And yes, also, I think some of these people on both sides just have autism. Enjoy the graphic for what it is, okay? And again, I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but I fear when it comes to Tate, people have a tendency to like overlook the horrible things he's done in favor of like only blaming it on the house, or God forbid, Violet herself. And that is not gonna be what happens in this video. So you've been warned. If you can't handle somebody calling out your fave for their poor behavior, this one might not be the one for you. And that's okay. Catch me and Violet always holding him accountable for his crimes, of which there are many.
I prepare for the noble war. I'm calm. I know the secret. I know what's coming, and I know no one can stop me, including myself.
In my opinion, Tate Langdon is really, really good personality disorder representation, and I tend to put him in the MPD camp, specifically more covert or vulnerable narcissism. However, it's like very rare for somebody to fit squarely into one of those subtypes. I'll put them on the screen up here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Constance lives in the overt camp, right? And that's where she's at most of the time. But she's also a woman, so there's different traits for female narcissists versus male narcissists. And it's just the way that it kind of presents on a society scale too, and how they're gonna interact with the world around them. So we're gonna see aspects of the different variants in Tate throughout the show, but I do think he tends to live in that sort of vulnerable, like, oh, pity me, oh, like that world. And then he switches to rage and anger whenever somebody pities him, because then their ego gets bruised and they freak out. And I will also say that I've seen a lot of arguments for him to have BPD as well, or borderline, and I see that. I really do. I think you can make a good argument for either one. For my purposes specifically, and kind of how I've always viewed his character, I tend to see him sort of kind of taking after Constance, and because it's so clear that she has MPD, that makes me lean towards him sort of developing that under her. That's very common for children of narcs to sort of, at the bare minimum, end up with traits from their parents, because obviously that happens in general, right? Like if you're growing up in a home, you're gonna kind of take from the people around you and model your behavior off of what you're learning. And as far as we know, Constance has been like this her whole life. And the little bits and pieces of info that we get on how she raised him, to me, speak to the fact that, like, of course he grew up narcissistic. How was he supposed to do anything else? There's definitely a lot of overlap in terms of traits when it comes to BPD and MPD. Like, you'll see the sudden temper, but the specific ways that Tate chooses to manipulate and rewrite, specifically the rewriting is the one that really gets me in terms of it being a narc trait. He will just like rewire himself to make his reality different than it was because he can't live in the real world. He can't handle it. That's such a narc trait. I know at the end of the show, we get Ben like turning around and being like, you're a psychopath, Tate. That's what's wrong with you. But I really feel like that's just for the drama of that word. Like, we're just throwing that around because it's more dramatic than turning around and telling him you're a narcissist. And again, traits of personality disorders overlap across the board. So if you've ever like encountered a narc or listened to a vulnerable or covert like talk about themselves, the description of being like demonic or soulless isn't lost on them. There's so much discourse about them having like dead eyes, and Tate absolutely has that in the beginning of the show. Even when he's with Violet, okay? We're gonna talk about the scene where they first meet and he's like writing on the board and then he turns around to face her with that like 1,000-yard dead-eyed stare. He needs to come with a trigger warning. And I've talked about this on Tumblr a couple times, but I do think his feelings for Violet, his feelings for his sister Addie, even his feelings for his mother and Nora, like, he has feelings for people, right? And so when you're looking at somebody who's a psychopath, they don't tend to hold on to attachments like that. It's just not, like, their empathy is so removed that they don't have the ability to do that. When you're looking at a sociopath, they tend to have sort of a set group, and it's usually very, very small. Just a small handful of people that they're like, you're different. That makes sense to me more. So if you were gonna label Tate a psychopath or a sociopath, I'm always gonna lean towards the sociopath camp. Again, though, I think he's just a teenage boy with narcissistic traits, and he's on the verge of growing into something that he can't stop. Now he's in this house that is so dark and evil, and it's feeding off of those feelings and emotions that he already had in him, throwing him into the violent fits of psychosis that we see. And that's why the shift in his demeanor is so apparent. I don't know how it works in terms of ghost aging, because when we meet him, he's like perpetually 17, but he's a ghost. So he's in his 30s or whatever. So I always lean on that for how he manages to evolve a little bit, because they say that, like, you know, if you start working on things before you're 25, they don't want to diagnose you before everything like locks in. So you've got time to sort of change yourself and work, and then once you hit 25, you're screwed. You're locked in on those traits. But in ghost years, he's literally 30-something, which is diabolical when he meets Violet in 2011. Get out. Why does this keep happening to me? And if that's true, then that would mean he's locked the fuck in when it comes to his personality disorder. I fear he must just be fully stuck at 17 and that he can make changes. I don't know. We know for a fact from the way that we see the house interact with other characters that it does feed off of things that they're already dealing with. And because it's a Ryan Murphy show, that means that the men get like really violent, really horny, and then the women get hysterical. Tate, from the beginning, has all these really complicated feelings about women and love because of his parents and like their dysfunctional relationship. And the house just twists all of that into like proper Reddit incel levels of hatred. He's really angry and he craves freedom from his abusive home life. Some of the only like small details we get about him are from the high school teacher when Violet goes to talk to him, and he says, you know, Tate was so quiet. He was like well behaved. He didn't really do much. He loved birds. And he was always checking out books on birds. And that, for me, immediately, I was like, oh, so he wants to fly away. Like, he is dreaming about being able to escape where he's at. We also hear him talk about wanting to escape with Violet when they go to the beach together, where he would just like look out at the horizon and just think about how none of what was happening to him mattered. And if he could just push through, like one day it would be over and he would be somewhere else. Which is so sad, because it does speak to how sweet he is at his core. And we see that with Addie too, right? And even Beau. Like, Constance's children could have been complete and total holy terrors, okay? They would have had every reason to grow up to be just as horrible as she is, and yet they sort of retained their sweetness underneath all of the abuse. But Tate still has all of that anger inside of him, so slowly but surely, like, being in the house turns it into this, like, violent resentment towards his family and community. He's also inside the house during his, like, pivotal developmental years, which should be a criminal offense in and of itself. Like, what do you mean this already abused toddler grew up in this hellhole of a house? Are we kidding? Who thought this was a good idea? And then they get out, right? Like, because there's a brief period of time. It's like he grows up in the house and then gets out of the house for part of high school, seems to be doing okay, and then they put him back in there. Free him, but you know who thought it was a good idea? The elephant in the room. Let's talk about Constance.
No matter how much you want it, I will never be your perfect son.
NPD isn't like 100% hereditary by any means, but Constance is an unbearable narcissist. We know this from her very first scene with Vivian, but it's like laughable. She's just insanely self-centered, and she spends this entire scene just like info dumping about herself, and Vivian is like amazed by it. Like it's so funny to watch the way Vivian like reacts to her, because Constance just sweeps into her house and then just like presents herself on the couch and is like posing and just like monologuing about herself, dumping all this like exposition onto Vivian. And Vivian's just standing there like with a paintbrush in her hand, looking at her like, what are you doing in my house? And she keeps telling her, like, I'm busy, you need to leave. Why are you in here? How did you get in? You need to leave. Why are you in my house? You need to get out of my house. And Constance just like bulldozes over everything she says and just like keeps going and going and going. And that's pretty much how she spends the entire show. She doesn't really have any maintainable relationships outside of her relationship with Addie. And this one only lasts because she is getting power from the fact that Addie needs her. So she presents their relationship as like, Addie is this really difficult child and Constance is the only one who can handle her and take care of her properly, and Addie needs her. And then we see Addie and like she doesn't have good boundaries, because how could she growing up in that house? But she's just like a normal girl, right? Like she has interactions with Violet that are like totally normal and chill. It's just this idea that like she can't exist away from her mother is totally fabricated by Constance, because Addie would be fine. Constance treats her like a broken doll and is constantly like belittling Addie to her face. But we do see Addie a handful of times like fight back and try to stand up for herself, but then Constance just gets even worse, and she has this like this one torture scene where she puts her like in a closet. I think, what does she call it? Like the bad girl closet or something? Puts her in a room with mirrors, right? Because Addie has grown up thinking that she's not beautiful. And so she puts her in this room with mirrors and makes her like look at herself. And we just see Addie get locked in here, and then she's just screaming bloody murder. So this like evil mother trauma loop thing is so typical of female narcs, the way that they like sink their claws into their kids and then don't let them leave. And so in a lot of ways, Tate escaped that. He tries to hold very harsh boundaries with her of keeping her away from him, and when they do talk, he's like super flat and removed with her for the most part. There are a couple scenes that we will get into where he folds, but for the most part, he's trying to remain like unaffected with her so that she has nothing to feed off of. Because the whole thing with narcs is that they want reactions. So Constance will like poke him and try to trigger him, and then we see him sort of holding firm and trying to not do that. And for her part, she's obsessed with him. So when she talks about Tate as a child, she discusses him in terms of like being perfect. Like he was her perfect child, because all of her other children have birth defects of one kind or another. And then he ultimately ended up disappointing her more than any of her other kids. And she says something along the lines of like, there's something, like he struggles with his own things, like something else is wrong with him. And again, sort of like they present him having this personality disorder as like him being the devil himself. And I I don't think that that's fair either. When we see her talking about him in present day, talking to him in present day, she very much acts like she's like disgusted by him. She doesn't want anything to do with him. But then at the same time, she's like obsessive and wants to like touch him. And she dates younger guys, right? And so that's always red flag for me. Like the second parents get touchy with their older kids while they're dating people that are younger, close to the kid's age, I'm immediately like, oh, what are we doing? So there's just always like a weirdness. There's that one scene in the hallway where she like tries to touch his face and then he pulls away from her and she touches her own face instead. Stop. In terms of Constance herself, she has this warped version of like love and relationships as well because of Tate's father, Hugh. He was like really handsome, really wealthy. That's why they were living in the house together. And she gave up her career as an actress to marry him and have his kids. And then he cheats on her and basically like poisons their life together. So she ends up killing Hugh and the maid, Moira, which is, we don't need to get into that, but she kills him and the girl he was cheating with. She kills Hugh when Tate is like 5 or 6 years old. So again, peak developmental years. Now he doesn't have a dad and his mom is insane and she starts relying on him for like emotional regulation and supply, and that ends up leaving him unable to self-regulate later on. And that really is where the bulk of his outbursts come from. Like you can kind of track his behavior and see him like getting overwhelmed and then exploding and then calming back down, getting overwhelmed, exploding. He doesn't know any like healthy coping mechanisms. So it's either like turn into a shell of a person and lay in bed all day and do nothing, or explode in anger. And there's like not really an in-between for him. It puts him in this position from childhood of like simultaneously being the golden boy kid because he's meant to be perfect, but then also the black sheep kid because he's so different and able to think for himself that he pulls away from Constance and sees through her abuse. And we see him sort of struggling with that when we see like the flashbacks of him, but also like when he starts to grow and change with Violet, there's this element to it where it's like he has these urges to like grow up and be better, but then at the same time he's holding himself back because if he does those things, Constance is gonna claim them for her own and be like, look at my perfect son, oh I just love him so much. And he doesn't want anything that's his to become hers because again, narc mother, she's gonna take credit for it. We hear her complain quite often that her gifts were never used properly, and so she ends up funneling all of that like resentment towards herself into Tate and being like, you're perfect, you can take your gifts, you can do what you need to do with them. And then when he also sort of self-implodes, that's where her disappointment comes from, because she views what he's done to himself as sort of throwing his life away and not striving for anything. He has no real purpose in life and she thinks that's pathetic. And then we, the viewer, know that he's dead, and so his life will never physically change. Like he can't leave the house, so she's just rubbing salt in the wound, right? Like there's only so much he can do now that he's a ghost, and it's still like never gonna be enough for her. When it comes to his mother, Tate is caught somewhere between just outrightly hating her and desperately craving her attention and approval. We know that she abused the other kids. Bo is tied up in the attic. Okay, she puts Addie in that mirror room, and we don't get confirmation that Tate was truly physically abused when he was younger. But given the way she treats the other kids, I don't think it's a stretch to think that it was physical and verbal. We know that it was verbal. The way she talks to all of them is crazy. And then she's abusing him in the present as well, right? So it's like, we think she just started doing that for fun when he turned into a ghost. I think the fuck not. That's who she's been the whole time. But Tate is mostly fixated on the fact that their dad left because of her. So he has always blamed her for the fact that he doesn't have a father figure. And then she went through like a string of like unstable boyfriends, ended up with Larry for quite a long time, but she was using Larry. And so I think Tate is too aware of things like that. So he knows that she's just doing what she needs to do to get with these men, to get what she wants from them. And he views that as a negative because it's given him like a warped view of love. Like love isn't real. It's just sex. It's just whatever. So again, the incel Reddit hatred stuff, like that's just brewing and festering in him for such a long time. And most of it circles back to the things that he thinks about his mom. That being said though, one of the only instances of like true emotion from Tate happens down in the basement with his mom when she confronts him about the baby situation with Vivian. And he breaks instantly because despite everything that she's done to the kids, he can't lie to her. This is also a reason why he avoids her the way that he does, because he knows that he just sort of reverts back into childhood when he's around her, and he becomes this little boy who can't stand up for himself and can't do anything on his own. And that sucks. Like, that's a horrible feeling to have. So it's easier to just avoid her and not be around her at all. I mean, he gets into several confrontations throughout the show, and he's usually like very well spoken, very aggressive, but he can't fight back when it comes to Constance. You know, if she's being nice to him, he can be like, ew, what are you doing? And like act disgusted and like push her away. But the moment she starts yelling at him, he completely crumbles. And that moment in the basement, she also like hits him. And so I always look at it as like a CPTSD trigger, and he just crumbles. Like he can't hold it together. Such a big thing with people who have MPD is this inability to have a sense of self outside of like what they project on other people or what other people project on them, right? Like it's so external in terms of like, oh, you think this about me, so that must be who I am. Oh, you want me to be like this, so I'll put that out so that you like that about me. They don't know who they are at their core. And I think it's so interesting because like Tate's also a teenager, so he's already dealing with like figuring himself out, trying to find out who he is. And then he has these traits where it's like kind of compounding that issue. We never see him engaging in hobbies outside of like music and games, distractions. And even then, those are tied to spending time with Violet. Whenever we catch a glimpse of him like alone in the house, he's just like brooding in the corner, lying in bed, curled up in a ball. Like he just doesn't do anything. He's so indecisive. He has no ambition, no purpose, and he ends up throwing himself at the women of the house in order to feel useful, because it's like taking care of them means he's needed, means they love him. He does own up to the mommy issues that he has outwardly to Moira, because he kills, I think it's after he kills Patrick and Chad. There's so much that happens, but he kills Patrick and Chad, which are the gay couple that live in the house before Violet's family move in. So he kills the gay couple. We're gonna get into that too, because that in and of itself, there's so much to be said about narcs, specific male narcs, and DL men, and how they're basically almost always the same thing. But he kills Patrick and Chad and then takes their bodies down into the basement. Moira catches him, and he killed them because they weren't gonna have a baby. They were talking about adoption, and then they started fighting. Patrick is like cheating on Chad. Chad's miserable. They're just constantly fighting. So Tate is like, okay, well, we have to scrap this plan because they were gonna just take the baby. While they're down there disposing of the bodies, Moira is like, you really need to work on this like crazy desire and attachment you have to the women of this house. Like, can you not see that it is ruining your life, you stupid idiot boy? And Tate is like, I think I have mommy issues. Do you know a good therapist? It's so funny. He's so funny, but it's terrible. It's also really bad. And the fact that he's self-aware enough to know that that's what's wrong with him and still not doing anything, buddy, count your days. One of the only like interests that he seems to have is like this fascination with like macabre stories and images. And so we see him in one scene with Ben, like trying to get information about past patients, where he's basically just like encouraging him to tell him like the worst of the worst that he's dealt with. And Ben is very much like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. Like, my stuff is private. And Tate's like, come on, just tell me a little bit, like really wanting to know like the gory details. We see him like pop up on Violet while she's cutting so that he can see her blood. He's unafraid of the more scary ghosts, you know, specifically that moment with like the demon baby ghost in the basement where he's like partnered with it. But then we also get moments of him like lamenting on the amount of pain and death in the world, how he thinks everything is like dirty, and it's like that typical incel-y rhetoric. He is totally willing to just wander around the house for eternity, getting up to whatever he wants on any given day. And that's a huge reason why when Violet shows up, he fixates on her so strongly. She's entertaining. She's this new thing for him to play with, and she's also super interested in him. So being with her sort of wakes up that feeling of purpose that he hasn't had in so long. Because as far as we know, before Violet's family moved in, he was just sort of letting the house take over and like slowly erode him more and more. And the whole thing with him going to see Dr. Ben, it's pitched as Constance sets up the appointment for him. So I guess because he's 17 still, she's like, oh, I need my son to be seen by a doctor, like he's gonna come visit you. But obviously Tate is dead, so he could have just said no to going to therapy. There's no way for her to make him go to those appointments, right? But he does go, and you can kind of say like, is he just going to like fuck with Ben and like get information on Violet? Maybe, but he doesn't talk about Violet in the beginning. Like the first couple sessions that he's with Ben, he's genuinely, or at least seemingly genuinely, talking about himself, talking about what's happened to him, trying to find meaning in it. And he circles back to that a few times too, where like once he gets close with Violet, he starts using Ben and being like, wait, but why am I like this? Like, do you think you can fix me or not? What's wrong with me? So there is like a certain self-awareness with Tate that we don't see in Constance. Constance is horrible and she doesn't seem to care that she's horrible. Tate is aware that he's fucked in the head. He knows something's wrong with him and he's desperately trying to figure out like, can it be fixed? Or am I screwed? Another reason why I do lean toward the house really influencing him is because when he finally does like the attack on the school and everything, he has to take stimulant to work up the nerve to go do that. And that for me speaks to the fact that he's too lazy to do it on his own. Like maybe he had the urge, maybe he had the like concept in his head, but I really think the house was like, no, you can do this. This is what's supposed to be done. This is like what you need to do. And it puts him in that psychosis state. Constance describes Tate to Violet by saying, he's a sensitive boy with too deep feelings. He has the soul of a poet, but none of the steel. And we do see that in Tate. He clearly struggles with this really intense emotional inner world, and he doesn't have anywhere to put it, at least nowhere healthy to put it. It's not like he, you know, writes or makes art or even like works out. Like there's no outlet for him. And so it turns into this negative where it becomes these like, you know, violent outbursts and stuff because he doesn't know what to do with himself. So he ends up just, you know, breaking things, hurting people, that kind of thing. Except for Violet, because she's the first person who like doesn't make him feel bad for expressing himself. And so he's able to share things with her that he doesn't share with other people because she's also kind of fucked up. So they have this like emo trauma couple thing going on where they're able to be really dark with each other and they don't get scared. Thankfully, in terms of differences between Constance and Tate, he's not overt and malignant the way that she is. So he's gonna use the pain that Violet shares with him and all the information that he picks up on from her to sort of morph himself into what he thinks she wants and then be that perfect person for her moving forward. I think to her credit, Violet sees through that somewhat because she is genuinely a 16-year-old, right? So she has no, well, I don't want to say no. She doesn't have a lot of context or a lot of experience with people like him, with this type of like love bombing situation that he puts her in. That's why it's so cool that she sees through the manipulation in the end and gets away from him, because it would be so much more expected for her to just kind of get stuck in this loop with him forever because she's so young. But she breaks away from it and she breaks the cycle. And I love that for her. And on his end, Tate ends up shocked by the fact that she sees through what he's doing. And in that like middle point of their relationship, she's not okay with it. I don't want to say that. She seems to understand why it's happening, why he's lied about what he's lied about, and like where he's coming from with it, and she loves him anyway. That surprises the fuck out of him. He's like, well, what are you talking about? I have to be perfect or you're not gonna want me. And she's like, no, actually, I want you exactly as you are. I'm okay with the imperfections. And he's like, we'd be having a whole nother conversation if he turned on her for being able to see him and for loving him, which I fear is more typical. That's usually what they do, is like turn and make everything awful. He doesn't do that. No, he just latches on even tighter and is like, perfect, now I'm never letting you go, which has its own issues. We know that he still weaponizes those more emotional things that he picks up on, because we see him do it like with Patrick, where he like very easily goads him into a fight to get the ring, or instigating fights with Constance and Larry. Like, he knows what threads to pull on to get people to do what he wants, which is a very narc-coded thing to do. One of my favorite scenes of him doing this is very early on, where in my opinion, Ben is being very dumb and he clocks Tate early on and like sees through everything, because Ben's a therapist, right? He's trained to do that. You would think he'd be trained better than to just poke holes in Tate's mask repeatedly. Like, he just sits there and is like, you're lying about this, you're lying about this, I can see that, no, repeatedly, okay? And Tate is clearly very spooked. He tries to like play it off and like laugh about it and be like, oh, wow, that was crazy that you saw through me like that, that's so cool. On what planet would that be the way that you would handle a person who you think maybe could be a psychopath? But that's what Ben does. And so then immediately Tate leaves that therapy session and goes to Violet and starts like flirting with Violet and locking in on her just to mess with Ben. He probably would have gone after her no matter what, because she's like a new young person in the house. Like, there's nobody else for him to be with, right? But he goes after her in that moment because of what Ben has done to him. And we know that because then Ben catches Tate in the room with her and is immediately like, what the fuck? Get out of my daughter's room. You know you're not supposed to be in here. Leave. While he's kicking him out, Tate pauses in front of him and goes, what's that thing you think I'm afraid of? Fear of rejection? Buddy, this is why people think you're evil. That right there. What are you doing? And even though you can kind of brush off the way he like manipulates her emotions, that hot and cold behavior that we know came from Constance and how she raised him, that shows up with Violet, and that is so bad. That kind of behavior can give you brain damage. It's so unhealthy. It fucks with your central nervous system. It rewires you to like crave this thing that the abusive person is doing to you. So unhealthy. His fantasies are very much heavy on like protection and provider elements. There's a lot of like toxic masculinity stuff going on with Tate. So he like covers with this like weird, intense, like, I'm so strong and I can protect you and I'm the man. And it's like, that's so not his personality. He's the little spoon. Like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy, but that's not, you're not that guy. Very easy to connect this like desire to be the protector back to the fact that his dad left them so young. And then he sees like nobody protecting his mom, nobody protecting Nora. Because Constance is so unwell, she's not protecting the kids. So now he's like this weird mix of like hyper masculine ideals to like project strength, but he's super emotional because he never learned how to self-regulate. I'm forever grateful though that he doesn't end up like stuck in this like weird macho spiral, because like if you think he's annoying now, imagine if he hated the fact that he's a crier. Like, what if that was a part of himself that he viewed as a negative? Oh, he'd be insufferable. On the note of his more like excessive outbursts, Constance does warn Violet that he doesn't react well to certain things. I fear that that's an understatement, but also kind of a lie, because Constance is manipulating Violet and trying to control the narrative around what's happening with him, in the same way that Tate is, you know, not telling Violet everything because he wants to make sure she only knows what he wants her to know. That's exactly what Constance is doing. She's telling Violet too much so that she can be like, oh, did he lie to you about that? Oh, I'm so sorry, Violet. I don't know why he doesn't trust you more. But then she's not giving Tate the chance to do that himself. Would he have? I don't know. Because he has blocked out the memories of his crimes as well. So maybe at some point he would have told her down the road. But when we meet him and when Violet is getting to know him, he is delusional about it. Like, he has completely blocked it out, rewritten it, hidden it away. We don't even know if he's aware because it's so ingrained in him to not think about it. Editing Sarah, just popping in to add that this level of like secrecy with him and the way that he hides things, yes, it's rewriting. It's also just hiding things. Being secretive and intentionally like hiding little things or big things from your partner, from just people in general around you, is a narcissism trait across the board. And if you look at the way that Tate bonds with Violet, he specifically tells her things about stuff that she has in common with him. So he shares details that are pretty personal, but they directly correspond with like what she is also sharing with him. He never really goes above and beyond to tell her more about himself. It's just in relation to her. And that's important because it shows the mirroring that he's doing with her. So yes, they're getting to know each other. Yes, they're learning things about each other, but he's really only sharing things that make them compatible to her. So in her mind, they're so similar. They have so much in common. They're going to get along great. This is perfect. And it lets him hide from all the things that she might not like about him. So if he just keeps her attention on the good stuff, he never has to share the other stuff with her. Little bit of backstory for anybody who doesn't know the premise of the show. Maybe we should have talked about this before. I'm assuming you all know enough. But the murder house right here, filled with ghosts, because anybody who dies on the property, their soul gets stuck inside and they exist as a ghost. As time goes on, they sort of seem to lose their grip on reality a little bit and things start getting forgetful. Not in the same way if you've seen Bly Manor. The ghosts in that literally like disintegrate and they like lose their faces as time goes by. The guys in Murder House are still themselves, but they sort of start to like lose memories and they get a little confused as time goes by. So sometimes they forget they're dead, they forget where they're at, they forget what time period it is. So Nora Montgomery is the original owner of the house's wife, and so they're like the oldest ghost on the property. Tate meets her when he's like a young boy. I wouldn't say toddler age, probably like 6 or 7 is like the first scene where we see them interact with each other, and I don't know if he knows her before that or not, but she's in the house with him and she definitely has interest in him because Nora's whole thing is that she had a baby, like her and her husband had a baby, and the baby died. The baby died. I think it was a lot. No, somebody killed it. Somebody killed the baby. Yes. Tapping back in. So the baby dies. And then the husband is a doctor and he goes a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, a lot cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and he brings the baby back to life. But it's not a normal baby. It's like a Frankenstein, real scary creature, okay? And it does live a little while and then it has to be dealt with because it's not normal. So Nora wants a normal kid. Desperately. She's interested in Tate because he is normal boy growing up in the house, right? And his mom sucks. So she sort of fills that void for him and is like the nice, loving mom that he's always wanted, which is just more of a mindfuck because she's a ghost and he's stuck with the real one, and then occasionally he can sneak down to the basement and see the demon baby child thing and Nora. So as time goes by and then, ultimately Tate gets stuck in the house with her and everything, Nora is one of the ghosts that starts to lose herself. Well, like I said about the whole thing with Ryan Murphy and what he does to the women in his shows, Nora's almost always hysterical, right? She's always crying. She's crying about wanting a baby. She's down in the basement sort of just hallucinating things and saying weird stuff. And Tate checks on her a lot because he still cares about her even though she is often forgetful of like who he is now. They have this plan for him to get her a baby. The whole thing with the pregnancy and raping Vivian and that being the decision that he makes, it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, so he is vindictive. Like it really shows that side of him because it would have been so easy to trick Violet into an accidental pregnancy. Like at that point, they're not fully together yet, but they were on the verge of a relationship, right? Like they're steadily getting closer because the rape happens very early on in the show. And again, I think it happens because he's not as close to Violet yet. So instead of following through with getting with her and then using her for the baby, he makes the decision to rape Vivian. And I feel like that, again, speaks to the mommy issues because he's attacking the good mom of the house, right? Because he can't attack his own mother. So it's this tangled web of awful, nasty, terrible. And then there's the element of like the suit and everything, because the leather suit that he wears, a lot of people, and me as well, I buy into this a little bit because of the like things that come out in season 8 and everything that we end up learning. But the suit is like demonic. Like there's something about the suit, and whenever you're in the suit, that the house fully possesses you. The house already is messing with all of them. We knew that when he was alive, the house was messing with him. It's no different now that he's a ghost. It's still able to get to him and influence him a little bit. When the suit is on, he's almost completely out of control. Like it takes over entirely. But that doesn't change the fact that he planned on attacking and assaulting Vivian. That was his decision. He wanted to get Nora a baby, so he did what he had to do to get the baby. Did the house possess him once the suit was on to make the baby demonic? Yes, that happened. It was his choice, y'all. So I couldn't get back with my boyfriend after learning that, right? Like Violet is a big girl. She makes her own decisions. That would have been it for me. Curtains. I think this is a good time to talk about the fact that beginning of the season Tate, like the Tate we meet and the Tate we see in flashbacks, really don't like women. Probably hates women, if we're gonna be totally honest with ourselves. I feel like that element of him, it's easy to brush it off because we see him kind of treat Violet and Nora and Addie better. But the other women, the way he treats Leah, the bully, oh my god. I get such ick in that scene because it's like such a layered thing if you're looking like into the like details of his personality disorder and like what is going on. He not only like uses double standards, which is such a narc thing to do, he like insinuates that Leah is this like less than person because she's a drug user, even though he is also a drug user, and like tricks Violet into bringing her to the house. He tells Violet we're just gonna scare her. It's not gonna be that big of a deal. Yeah, they turn the lights off in the basement and then he sicks the scary demon baby that we just talked about on Leah. But before that, Tate pushes her down on the ground and jumps on her from behind and is like on top of her, like holding her down and choking her. He's like pulling her hair and stuff. It's so icky and like weirdly sexual and creepy, especially when you think about the fact that he's so much older than these teenage girls. And Violet can kind of see what's happening, but they do like a strobe light thing in the basement, so the lights are flickering really bad and she's only seeing it in like bits and pieces, but she also sees the demon monster, and Tate like holds Leah down while the demon baby scratches her across the face, so Leah runs away from them with like horrible gashes on her face. This ends up scaring Violet really badly, and so she tells him like, I don't know what that was, but I don't trust you and I don't want to talk to you anymore. You need to leave me alone. My dad was right about you. You're a freak. That hurts him so bad, right? Because he thought they were vibing. He thought they were on the same level. And when she runs away from him, he's like, I thought you weren't scared of anything. And so once again, we see him, he gets emotional, right? Like sadness hits him where he's like, oh my God, she's rejecting me. She doesn't like me anymore. What the fuck do I do? And then the response to the rejection is immediate scary anger. So just proving her point that he's unstable. And then he follows that up with doing the rape on Vivian that night. I also want to say that the whole thing with the amount of assault in this season and how much of it is done by Tate, I choose to, put it with the whole, he's a misogynist, he doesn't respect women. We see that in his behavior. This behavior proves those feelings that he must have. It's also just a Ryan Murphy writing choice thing. Like, he just does that. Every season of American Horror Story, you were signing up to watch women be brutalized. And I'm over it. That's why I stopped watching when I stopped watching. There's nothing entertaining about that to me. I don't find it interesting. I make it interesting in terms of Tate by adding, my own thoughts on why it's happening. But I don't think Ryan Murphy wrote it that way on purpose. I think he just did it for shock value. The whole ideology around Tate not liking women, I think stems very obviously from growing up with Constance as a mother and his hatred towards her. Given how he softens to Violet once they start genuinely connecting to each other, I think it's very clear that he doesn't actually really feel that way deep down. Like, it is this byproduct. It is this thing that he's sort of been conditioned to think and feel. And the house makes it worse, you know? So whatever resentments he had, whatever anger he had, it's just been festering all this time. And now he's got Violet in front of him, and she sort of proves him wrong on these things that he's always thought. There's still just a very apparent lack of respect for women, unless, like Nora and Violet, they're giving him something back in return. I know I mentioned it kind of jokingly, but let's just touch on the correlation between narc men and DL men and how I think that applies to Tate. I don't think Tate Langdon is gay. I think he's bi, probably, because I think he does have feelings for Violet. There's so many moments that could very easily be interpreted as internalized homophobia from him, and I just think it does his character a disservice to not at least just like touch on it. There's that weird moment where they're like digging down in the basement. They find the magazines that are like, kind of, we're led to believe they're like leftover from Chad and Patrick, but somebody hid them. Somebody intentionally put them down in the basement in the crawl space and hid them away. And when they find them, Violet comments that they're hot, and Tate like agrees with her. Clocked that so fast. I was like, what did you just say? Repeat that a little louder for the people in the back. He makes several semi-offhanded comments, and then there's like the brutal way that he chooses to kill Chad and Patrick that has like a sexual undertone to it. Specifically the murder itself. I don't know how to view that as anything other than internalized homophobia, because why are you making it a hate crime? Why didn't you just kill them the way that you killed, you know, other people in the show? The show came out in 2011, and homophobic jokes at the time were fairly standard, and so you can just write them off and be like, that's what it was, it's just a product of the times, it doesn't mean anything. However, again, I find it more interesting to sort of play with that connection and see what that might mean for Tate. And it gets to the point where when they're out on the beach for like their first date on Halloween, Tate's trying to explain to Violet that he's never felt this way about anybody before, especially not a girl. Now, again, that to me speaks to, I don't like women. Like, my mom has me so fucked up that I just don't like women, and I thought you all sucked, right? But now I kind of have feelings for you, and that's crazy. But Violet hears him say that and goes, are you gay? Totally serious. Like, she fully was like, is that what this is about to be? Are we gonna talk about that? And he's immediately like, no, oh my God, no. And they brush it off, and then like the other kids from the high school show up and like the scene ends. But I just think it's worth mentioning, okay? We should just not ignore that that happened. Circling back to that ability to like maintain relationships, I think that Tate does a significantly better job than Constance, because her life seems like a continual revolving door. Like, once she's done with somebody, she just sends them away. Tate just doesn't let people in. Very rarely does he get attached to people. And when he does, things are unfortunately still centered around him controlling the narrative and micromanaging what version of himself other people get to see. He's gonna get validation based off of what people think of him, so he has to control what people think. He does seem to be a pretty decent big brother. I wish we had more flashbacks of them together, but the one that we get of them sitting around the dinner table with Larry after Beau has died because Larry killed him, Tate put that together, right? Like, he recognizes that Constance had Larry do that so they could get their house back. It's this whole icky cycle where she's been controlling Larry to get him to do whatever to get them back in the house. Tate has put that all together. And he's trying to get Addie to see it too. Because again, Addie, I don't think I said this when we first talked about her, but Addie does have Down syndrome. And so Constance plays that up. It's never explicitly said, but we know she has Down syndrome, and then Constance just plays up the fact that she's so naive and so childlike and so dumb, and she'd be so helpless without her mother. All lies, right? Addie is completely capable. And Tate points that out. He's really one of the only characters other than Violet who seems to recognize that she's super smart and totally capable and fine, but Constance is belittling her and making her feel like she needs, it's that like, Munchausen's bullshit, where she's like emotionally abusing her to the point where Addie's like, yeah, I guess I do need to stay home. I guess I do need my mom. And they have that awful codependent bond that Tate is desperately trying to break out of, and he's trying to take Addie with him, but it's not working. His anger towards Larry killing Beau, and also Larry killed his wife and daughters. That was the house manipulating him into doing that, but it did happen. Like, he did kill his family too, and then he sort of integrates into the Langdon family to be with Constance, as if his wife and daughters didn't exist. And Tate hates that because his dad left when they were kids too. He's super angry, and that leads to him lighting Larry on fire before the shooting at the school. I don't want to use different words. We've been using the words. I don't know what's gonna happen to this video. We'll just see. Tate's father, Hugh, is also a ghost in the house because the maid, Moira, is the one that was cheating with his dad, and then later his dad was assaulting her when Constance killed them. But his dad is in the house. And Tate never sees him. As far as we know, Hugh just never shows himself to Tate. Do you even understand how messed up that is? What are you talking about, sir? So from the time he's like 6 years old, Tate just thinks that their dad fully up and left them and has no idea that Constance killed him. I don't know why Moira doesn't tell him the truth. Maybe to like protect his feelings on it, because I feel like that would have really triggered a meltdown if he knew his dad was there and he just couldn't see him. But yeah, nobody tells him. And it's why he's fixated on trying to be the perfect partner and also find the perfect partner. Like, he's very fixated on like him and Violet being soulmates and him and Violet like being destined to be together and they have to stay together forever because he is desperately trying to fix the wound of his parents breaking up. I've mentioned it already, but I think probably for me, the biggest reason why I lean towards him having MPD instead of just, psychopathy or BPD is the fact that he rewrites his own history in an effort to avoid the crimes that he's committed. For a huge chunk of the season, like almost all the episodes, we go back and forth wondering if Tate is aware of what he did or if he genuinely also doesn't know. They did such a good job of writing it in a way where, just like Violet, you can't tell the whole time if you're supposed to trust him or not either. Like, is he just a victim or did he actually do something? Why can't he remember? Is he controlling that? Is the house keeping the memories from him? Is he just lying? And he genuinely remembers the whole time, but he's pretending not to? By the end of the show, though, we know that he was aware the whole time and he was just lying. He pushed everything away to avoid admitting what he'd done, to hold back the shame of all of that. And that whole thing with shame and spiraling into these like moments of self-loathing, like the self-deprecation stuff, that's so covert and vulnerable of him. Okay, they love to be the victim. We'll touch on this more as we move through like the relationship timeline section of this video, but Tate rewrites things in real time for us too. So this whole thing where he has pushed away this moment with the school, he doesn't know why he died, he doesn't know what happened to the kids, he doesn't know why they're chasing him. That is its own big thing, but then there's small moments throughout the show where he also does it, and he sort of plants seeds of confusion in Violet, which is again more narcissistic traits of trying to keep her confused so that he stays in control. It's gaslighting, people. He just be gaslighting all of them. Ben knows he's doing that. Okay, Ben clocks it, sees it, calls him out on it. What I think where Ben gets it wrong is that he equates all of those things to just being psychopathy. And he's like, you're a psychopath, you have no empathy, you're a pathological liar, that's what's wrong with you. But we see Tate have shame spirals. Like, he can fake certain emotions, but the moments where he is breaking down and having like these emotional outbursts, that's real. Sometimes he fake cries. He fake cries with Ben more than once, and both times Ben is like, what are you doing? Turn that off. Stop the crocodile tears. But like, there's a big difference in this with Ben and this. That's real, okay? That's actual emotion coming out of him. And I think ignoring that and pretending like all of it is fake is why Ben is such a bad therapist. Because what are you talking about, dude? He's hiding from everything because the shame is killing him. He can only function semi-properly in a world that he has created. If he was just psychopathic, he wouldn't have the need to hide from any of it because he wouldn't care that he'd done it. There wouldn't be any shame or remorse to feel. He would just be completely void of anything and nothing would matter to him. He wouldn't care that Violet's hurt by it. He wouldn't care that Vivian almost dies and is affected by his choices. He wouldn't care that Ben is upset and the marriage almost breaks down from it. None of that would matter to him. But all of it matters to him. The kids upset him on Halloween. We see that with Violet in that moment where they show up and are like kind of bullying her and him at the same time. Initially, he's only worried about like protecting Violet and making sure they leave Violet alone, but it does get to him to the point where he ends up sprinting away from everybody and running down the street, literally running from the reality of his past. But yeah, he doesn't care. None of it matters to him. He's void of all emotions, Mr. Ice Cold Robot. He don't give a fuck. I don't believe you, Ben. I don't believe you. I think you need to go back to school. I love Violet so much. I adore her, even though I will be the first to say that Ryan Murphy, it's weird. Ryan Murphy loves to fill his shows with women. I just wish he could write them better. He gives us one really excellent female character a season. This time it's Constance, but Violet is great. Thaisa poured her heart and soul into her, and Violet is awesome. She's also younger. When we meet her, she's 16. And I almost never 100% like the way he writes teenagers. You know, I don't know of a lot of people that write kids and teenagers well. But Thaisa brings such emotional depth to her that it's hard not to connect to her pain and root for her throughout the season. Even when she's being a menace to her parents, because that stuff feels realistic. Somebody needed to tell Ben off, and if it wasn't gonna be me, I'm glad it was her. When we meet Violet, her family is moving from Massachusetts to Los Angeles. Huge life change for her because her father, Ben, cheats with his freaking psychology student at the college on Vivian after Vivian has a stillbirth. Oh, I don't like Ben. I don't like Ben. Why didn't we kill him, guys? They did. But Tate didn't do it. So she's really not happy when we first meet her. She has no respect for her father, and she's fighting with her mom because she kind of feels like they should have just left him. She doesn't understand why Vivian wants to like waste time making the relationship work when it's obviously so problematic and awful. She's upset about leaving her home and her friends and having to start over. She already is a bit of a loner girl. She didn't have a lot of friends in school. She wasn't really happy, but she didn't want to leave everything and start over. I think she's supposed to be a junior, so it's like halfway through her high school career and she's having to redo everything at a new school. And again, East Coast to West Coast, huge change. She's creative and empathetic and really strong-willed. If you know me in real life, then you know how much I adored her in high school, okay? I remember vividly when my best friend was telling me about the show, she was like, your man Evan Peters is in it, and also I think you're really gonna relate to the girl. We've all known who I am from a very young age. But I do think that there's an element of her pain that is weirdly romanticized under Ryan's gaze, and I can remember feeling like it was very strange when I was younger, and watching it back now as an adult, I'm still kind of like, what are we doing here? Because there's just moments where he like zooms in on the wrong aspects of it to sort of sensationalize things when she's clearly a very unwell, depressed teenager dealing with some super dark stuff. It leaves you with this impression that he almost wanted to paint it like it was cool to feel like her, which again I think is really dangerous considering some of her behavior. And it really ignores the fact that she's just as unwell as Tate in certain ways. Kind of similar to the way that a lot of people feel about Hannah Baker in 13 Reasons Why. It feels sometimes like these showrunners want to present this like blueprint of a girl that you can relate to and copy. And when you're dealing with these topics like self-harm and suicide in both of these guys' cases, I just think we need to be careful with how we portray it, and we need to make it clear that it's not a thing to look up to and aspire to. We figure out pretty early on that Violet and Tate have the same core wounds, and that's a big bonding point for the two of them. She feels like her parents don't understand or care about her at all, really, because they made this decision to uproot their entire lives, didn't seem to pay attention to the fact that it would like, you know, ruin her high school career. Her father abandoned them in a different way, and now he's trying to make up for it, but she just can't bring herself to care because she feels so disrespected by him. She feels like he threw away their family, like they weren't good enough. And he's now forcing this commitment from her that she doesn't want to give him. And she's been watching Vivian suffer this whole time because Vivian has had trouble with her pregnancies, and then losing the baby was so horrible for her, only for her dad to then not even support her through it. And I think that that fact that Vivian stays with Ben is a big reason why Violet is like primed and ready to fall for somebody and accept the abuse that comes with loving them. It's been normalized on both sides. Tate thinks love is possessive and controlling. Violet thinks love is chaotic and violent. So they've been primed to accept these things and even crave them in each other because they view them as being normal. It's why I'm so glad that we get to watch her grow up on screen, and as she's moving through this relationship with him, find her inner strength to leave him behind. It makes the goodbye scene so much more powerful, knowing that she's doing what her mother couldn't do. I love seeing boundaries go up for characters that have never known how to like properly utilize them, especially if they're doing it without an example to follow. This energy though that she shows up with of being, you know, relatively shy, lonely, and believing that nobody really understands her, and now she's like dropped in this new world of LA and it's even more different. So she was a loner before, now she's like an outcasted loner who everybody's making fun of. It just makes her a perfect target for somebody like Tate, because he's able to appear and just fit himself into the mold of like her perfect best friend that later turns into like a lover and protector vibe. She doesn't have anybody to talk to when they meet, and he has things in common with her. That's what she sees. Like when she meets him, she sees the things they have in common and she's like, oh, thank God, finally somebody that I can talk to about this stuff. Whereas I think Tate, at least in the beginning, is gathering information. Like he doesn't know how to not ensnare her, so he is using what he learns about her to keep her close with him for longer. She also has that horrible relationship with Ben, so she doesn't have any male figures to lean on in her life, and she's so young, which means that somebody like Tate coming in and being a protector to her, paying attention to her, giving her male attention that is kind and loving in her eyes in the beginning, it's gonna mean more to her because she's not getting it from anywhere else. There's multiple moments of him using phrases like, it's okay, I'm here now. I'll protect you. You don't need to worry. I'm here. She's just happy to finally have somebody looking after her, even though he does not have her best interest at heart at all. There's a selfish motherfucker when we first meet him. It also doesn't help that he's Evan Peters, okay? It just doesn't help, because once he like settles into the role he's gonna play with her and he starts being more expressive, again, when we first see them together, he is dead-eyed, he is not doing much with his face, and then slowly but surely he opens up and the mask changes to be what she wants, and he's charming as hell, okay? So she's screwed. Like, he would get me too, are we kidding? Look at the dimples. It's over. And then on top of him being so cute, them having things in common, he prioritizes her. He makes her interests feel important. Painting the rose black is the cringiest, most Tumblr core thing I have ever seen, but it works because he is the first boy to ever try. She has nothing to compare this kind of behavior to, and he is actively molding himself into Mr. Perfect. She's 16 years old. What do you think she was gonna do? This is a canon event. Constance can't stay out of anybody's business, so when she realizes that Violet and Tate are getting closer together, she actually like pushes them together more, but she has to control it. So she's worried, just like Tate. Tate lies to Violet and doesn't tell her the truth about everything. As far as Violet knows, for a very long time in their relationship, too long in my opinion, Tate is just a normal boy. She only sees him at the house because he's a ghost and he can't go anywhere else. But she thinks he's just her dad's patient. And so she sees him when he comes for his sessions with Ben. Sometimes he sneaks over and they hang out a little bit more. But they kind of have to hide their relationship because from the moment Ben finds out about it, he's like, Violet, you need to stay away from Tate. Tate sucks. Constance, on the other hand, sort of pushes them together. It's a weird choice for her because you would think that she would want to keep Tate for herself. But she does seem to have moments of being like, I can make him happy, and then if I can make him happy, maybe he'll let me be his mom again and I can get back in there. So she uses Violet as sort of like a peace offering kind of thing. But she's still being really controlling because she is the one to tell Violet the truth about what happened. So she takes away Tate being able to share the truth with Violet, which ends up making Violet not trust him. So was it a good thing that she did that, or was she secretly trying to blow the relationship up? You decide. But while she's having this conversation with Violet, she says, I think that's why he's so taken with you. He craves your strength. And that aspect of their relationship, I'm actually very thankful for, because when it comes to people with NPD, especially like the vulnerable ones like Tate, it's fairly obvious that they crave real connection. I think across the board, I think narcissists in general, they crave connection and they're terrified of not being given it or not being good enough to deserve it. So they push people away preemptively or like poison relationships preemptively to avoid that happening to them. But vulnerables especially, they want somebody to take care of them, but then they also view those feelings of needing that as weakness. So now they hate you for wanting to do that for them because they hate themselves. So how dare you like them enough to want to help them? They don't deserve that. Now you're stupid for thinking that they do. It's this horrible vicious cycle. But Tate, thankfully, doesn't do that to Violet because, again, he doesn't view his emotional side as being a weakness, or at least it doesn't trigger his shame. I think partially it's because Violet doesn't seem to ever view that as a bad thing in him, so she never makes him feel like he's doing too much for being emotional around her or for getting upset about something outside of his anger. His anger is a different thing. Like, his temper is scary and she doesn't like that about him, and it's very obvious that there are moments where she's genuinely very scared of him. I'm specifically talking about like his crying side, because the guy's always on the verge of tears, let's be real. Since she doesn't, belittle or like bully him about that side of himself, he doesn't ever really spiral out over it, and there ends up being this really interesting balance to their imbalances when they're together. They're equally codependent and they sort of feed off each other until the very end. And this is again why I think this type of dynamic being portrayed this way is so interesting, because you very rarely see narcs and empaths being genuinely symbiotic and like getting what they need from each other and not harming each other in the process. That is so rare. And I think it is because he is so young still. So he's not on the level that Constance is at, because you can say that Constance goes after men that are empathetic, not so much the young one that she's with, but like Larry, the one that she tricks into doing stuff for her. He's doing stuff for her because he believes that she's a good person who deserves to be looked after and loved. Constance doesn't think that about herself. Guys, it's snowing right now. It was 60 degrees all week here in Chicago, and it is snowing. Violet is a really strong-willed character, and that comes out in her stubbornness, but it also comes out in her conviction on things. She's brave, she's loyal, she's really intelligent, creative, and fun to be around, despite the fact that she's absolutely dealing with depression. So we get this like duality to her personality, where sometimes when she has the energy, we're seeing her laughing and smiling and enjoying herself, and other times she's really wounded and jaded. And even in those really bad days, she still has so much empathy. Even for Leah, the girl who like busted her lip at school because she was bullying her so crazily. Like the way the girls like gang up on her in that first episode is wild. But she still befriends Leah after the attack in the basement because she knows that Leah went through something that she's going through. She's trying to understand things, and she's trying to like offer Leah comfort if she can. After Leah was horrible to her, they end up kind of in the same boat of like both being exiled from school, because once Leah gets her face scars and like the crazy PTSD that she comes back to school with, she loses her friends too. And that's really because Violet's willing to put her pride aside and go to Leah and be like, hey, I know we went through something. Can we please talk about it and see if we can help each other? I think if Tate wouldn't have gotten involved and tried to like help her by attacking Leah, she would have handled it on her own. She already was standing up for herself. She already was fighting back against the bullies. But he just can't help himself because he's got to be at the center of everything she's involved with. And also he can't leave the house. So I think that's really hard for him, knowing that she's dealing with stuff outside of his control that he has no way of like being there for. She also stands up to her parents multiple times, and she's quite mean to them. And again, she is a 16-year-old girl, right? I think that's fairly common to fight with your parents when you're that age. But the things she says are like super eloquent and valid. And the things she calls them out on ultimately lead to their relationship finally, you know, sort of finding healing and being stronger, because they do end up stuck together in the house. And so it's either like they become one big happy family or they're miserable for all eternity. Tate is drawn to her because she radiates all this goodness underneath the grumpiness of her like outer shell. She's literally all the things that he wishes he could be. And I also really love the fact that she stays calling him out on his bullshit almost from the very beginning. She freaks out on him in the scene in the basement, and then after their like weird moment with the high school kids on the beach when they're on their date, she confronts him again and like demands to know what's going on. Despite her desire to confront him and sort of force communication that she knows they need to maintain their relationship, she does end up agreeing with Constance when Constance explains to her, you know, he doesn't handle certain things well and you need to be kind of gentle with him. So she pretends not to know about the shooting, and she pretends not to know that he's dead, and to let him sort of live in that lie, which is so unhealthy for both of them. It definitely speaks to Constance and her ability to manipulate, that Violet trusts her, but I also think just on Violet's end, it shows us that she knows these red flags are bad, and it's easier for her to ignore them as well. Because if she just pretends like she doesn't know the truth about him, she can pretend he's nothing but the sweet boyfriend that she's always wanted. But I do think she knows deep down that those red flags are ultimately going to add up to a boy that she should not be messing with. And all of that information that she has on him goes against the sweet, kind nature that she's come to like associate with him, which creates that cognitive dissonance that those bitches feed on. If she's confused about what's going on and how she can handle things, she's more likely to just wait it out and see what he ends up doing, even though we know as the viewer, Tate's not going to do anything. Unless he is forced to tell her the truth, he is not going to speak on anything. He is going to live in La La Land and pretend like he's perfect and pretend like she's perfect and their relationship is perfect and nothing is wrong. It's such a terrible plan to think that she can like manage his emotions and just avoid anything that might trigger him so that he doesn't have a violent episode. Girl! It leads to weeks of Violet tiptoeing around him to avoid his temper, shrinking in on herself. Like, her depression gets so much worse because she is just chipping away pieces of herself and giving them to him. He's doing pretty great, right? Like, he loves her and is super happy, and she is just turning into a shell of herself, and we're watching that happen. She ends up so torn apart over everything that she knows about him that she takes the entire bottle of sleeping pills that Leah gives to her to like help with living in the house in order to cope with everything. We end up finding out that she ODs, but Violet thinks it was just an attempt that didn't work. So she wakes up and thinks that she's fine, but we as the viewer just watch her continue to fade away. And now Tate is aware of how bad it is. That moment where she ODs, we'll get into it fully in a minute when we do the whole relationship timeline, but that moment is really his like point of no return because he knows that he's losing her. I absolutely love the way they wrote and handled the scene where Violet sends him away for the first time. I know I said it already, but I love when characters who have never had boundaries utilize them for the first time and really realize what they mean. And so when she sends him away, she is literally putting up like a veil boundary between them because she uses the go away trick, which means that he can't get back to her until she calls him again and releases the veil between them. So Tate is having a meltdown. He's crying, he's screaming, and then when she uses the go away trick, he just disappears. The second he's gone and she's alone in the bedroom, Violet just breaks down and starts sobbing because it's horrible. She absolutely loves Tate. We know that. We've known that the whole time. She sees the good in him. She's told people about the good she sees in him. She's seen the changes that he's tried to make and actively made for her and for himself. She has watched him try to be a better person again and again and again. And then this thing has happened that she cannot forgive him for. There's just no coming back from it. And instead of continuing to self-sacrifice and make herself smaller and push away her emotions in order to be with him, she finally makes the decision to send him away and pick herself. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, right? It fucking sucks. And so she's sobbing in her room all alone. And then Vivian shows up and hugs her and just holds her while she's crying. And it's this beautiful moment for the two of them because Vivian couldn't walk away from Ben. But now she's watched Violet do it, and so she's holding her, and she's just like, I know that was so hard. I'm so proud of you. You are so brave. That was a brave thing that you just did. And it's so true. Oh my God, I could cry just thinking about it. It's such a powerful moment. I'm so glad that they handled it that way. I'm so glad that they made it a good thing for Violet to do, because he is so abusive. He is so bad for her right now in this moment. He is so bad for her. And now my girl gets at least a handful of years to grow into herself as best she can, stuck in the house for all of eternity. Good Lord.
You asshole!
I scared you.
No, you didn't.
Now we're gonna dive into the relationship itself and really the cycle that they're in together. While I do think that they have moments of genuine connection, or at least as close to genuine as Tate can get, the whole thing with the two of them starts, and much of their relationship exists inside this like trauma bond loop that they're in because of him. And for so much of it, Violet is manipulated in one way or another. So it's hard for me to just call it a relationship and act like they were healthy with each other, because they weren't. So we never get context on when Tate sees Violet for the first time. We as the viewer see Violet meet him for the first time after one of his sessions with Ben. But we don't know when he saw her for the first time, because Tate watches her. Like, we know that later on we find out that he like watches her sleep and like sneaks into her room, which was his room at one point. He spies on her quite often once they know each other, and I don't think it's a stretch at all to think that he's been doing that from the moment that they moved in. But for Violet, she meets him for the first time in the bathroom while she is actively self-harming. He catches her doing it and then points out her technique and corrects it to tell her to do it a different way if she actually wants it to work. And when she yells at him to get out, he says, if you really want to kill yourself, next time shut the door. So that's her first impression of him. Once again, I would just like to reiterate the lack of respect, the lack of boundaries. Like, that is Tate. Do I think he has good qualities in him? Yes. But the way he chooses to initially interact with her, terrible. Fast forward a little bit to when they're hanging out in her room for the first time. This is when they're actually talking to each other, and they bond over the fact that they both self-harm. So he shows her his scars, she has her own that he knows about. They're swapping stories back and forth of things that they've been through. They very quickly bond over like the shared trauma that they've gone through with their families, and then hobbies and interests like music and art and stuff like that. I mentioned it before, but this is when he really plays up that like deadened look in his eyes, and it doesn't last, right? Like, Tate very quickly starts morphing into like more charming and charismatic and like flirting with her. But in the beginning, he's studying her. There's nothing there, and he's absorbing everything she's giving him and sort of reflecting it back to her. It's so textbook that it's hard for me to believe that nobody on the writing team knew what they were doing, but then they go and call him a psychopath later on. And with the way they wrote Constance, so narcissistic, it boggles my mind. I'm like, how did nobody think that that's what he had? Or has been just a bad therapist? Or is it just the drama? I don't know. But it just feels way too textbook for that to not be what's happening. From that first meeting, he starts really playing into the things that they have in common and really feeding the things that she wants to hear. So they've bonded over their parents not being great, right? And then she brings up like what happened with her dad and how he hurt her mother really badly. And Tate immediately like whips back around and completely like monotone and like no emotion is like, oh, that's horrible. If you love someone, you should never hurt them. To me, it's very unsettling, but it's what Violet wants to hear. So she's immediately like, oh my God, I know, right? And she's just eating everything up because he's finally giving her the validation that she's been looking for. His lack of boundaries are once again really obvious because this is the first time they've hung out, and he writes taint on her chalkboard. And you're gonna tell me that he is not intentionally fucking with her to mess with Ben and Vivian. I don't believe you. He went into this knowing what he was gonna do to her and enjoying it like a game, okay? And then he fell for her and was like, uh-oh, now I'm locked in and stuck, okay? But the beginning of this for him was a game. He was trying to manipulate and corrupt her. When he sits back down with her after writing on the chalkboard, he grabs her hand and starts like touching her scars. She's a little spooked by this and immediately pulls away from him and tries to put distance between them again, but he's so clingy already because he's decided that she's a target. And I know that word sounds harsh of me saying that she's a target for him, but the fact that he chooses to write the word taint on the board, I remember like the red flag warning sirens going off in my head the first time I saw it, because it's just like so obvious that he knows that she's gonna be a victim for him. He can get what he wants from her and he's going to. Very quickly after that, Ben catches them and kicks Tate out of the room, but it doesn't matter that Ben warns her, and if anything, the fact that Ben is like, you don't need to hang out with Tate, Tate is not somebody that you can be friends with, he's a little scary and unsettling, you need to leave him alone, makes Violet want him more. It's kind of like that classic thing of like her being the rebellious teenager, but she's already fighting with Ben and doesn't want to do what he wants, so if her being with Tate is going to bother him, she's going to do it even more. While Tate absolutely love bombs her in the beginning by playing up the things they have in common, leading into her interests and stuff, even with things that he's maybe not actually interested in, I will say that the unique thing with the two of them is they really do genuinely have a lot in common. So it's like what he's doing in the beginning isn't technically lying all the time, it's just playing it up to a level that is so outside of what he normally does with other people. And you can kind of say that for him, it's the first time he's ever felt like he can open up that way. And I do think that that's partially what it is too, but because he like goes after Violet, it's hard for me to not view it as also manipulation. I just don't think Tate is fully aware that he's doing it all the time. Like, I think his boundaries are so fucked up and his ability to like emotionally regulate on his own is so non-existent that his codependency and enmeshment just happens without him fully meaning for it to. And it's that aggressive mirroring that he does with her that really worries Ben. And Ben clocks that and is like, this is bad, because he knows that they're gonna like feed off each other. And in the same way that their good qualities come out with each other, the bad qualities are also gonna be amplified because they're so similar. We also see Tate crack under the pressure that he is putting on himself, right? Because Violet likes him. She sees him. She knows he's a little spooky. She relates to him and wants to be friends with him because she also feels a little spooky. So her version of herself being a little darker, knowing that she doesn't always get along with like the general populace, she feels like Tate fits that mold too. And she's like, thank God we can at least be weird together. But then for Tate, he's trying to be like the perfect brand of weird for her. And whenever that doesn't work or something goes wrong, that's when he has these like really emotional, sometimes violent outbursts with her, because the cracks in the reality that he's trying to make for them are forming and breaking. Even though she never asked for that behavior from him to begin with. She just likes him. It's that simple. Violet just wants Tate. He just doesn't believe that he's good enough for that to be the only thing he's giving her. He has to be the perfect version of himself, whatever that is. And I do think the fact that Violet is also on the darker side personality-wise is what lets him be able to open up to her and share these things that he's usually kept hidden. We know that he's, you know, telling Ben stuff that he's been through, but he's still pitching it to Ben as like, oh, these are just thoughts that I have. These are just like, you know, urges, but I'm not going to do anything. With Violet, he's a little bit more open about the emotional stuff too. So like things with his mom, wanting to escape his home life, wanting to escape the town in general. He shares that stuff with Violet that he's not even telling Ben. He does even go so far as to basically tell her, I'm a ghost, everybody in this house is a ghost, all the scary, evil things that keep happening to you are because this house is haunted and we're all dead. And it's so absurd that she laughs and is like, okay, yeah, whatever, tell me the actual truth, Tate, what's wrong with you? And he has to be like, right. See, I knew you wouldn't believe me. Which he doesn't pitch it to her as a realistic thing, okay? He's like trying to plan a seance and stuff and trying to like ease her into it with more lies, but because he keeps making everything sound sound like a game or like he's joking, she doesn't believe him when he's actually telling the truth. And that reaction from her ends up reverting him back into like, okay, I guess I should just pretend because she's not going to believe me even if I tell her the truth. So it's like a reverse of what it would be in real life. What really bothers me in the first half of the season and really speaks to, you know, the resentment towards women, misogyny that he's dealing with, is the fact that while he pretends to be super nice and friendly and kind to Violet to her face, and we never see him mistreating her outside of that first time when he tells her how to self-harm better, you know. Outside of that, he's kind to her in person. And then behind her back, he is incredibly gross and belittling. Like, he is using it to kind of bother Ben because he knows that Ben doesn't want him anywhere near Violet. So he makes like really crude comments to Ben and is insinuating that they're already hooking up and stuff like that, or that they're definitely going to be very soon, and Ben like can't do anything about it. But it's just gross. Like, it's just really gross, and it shows this like lack of respect for Violet. And like, okay, yeah, he is a 17-year-old kid. I don't care. I don't give a shit. He's a little punk. Like, he is such a little bitch in so many moments in the beginning of the season. Thank God he grows and changes, or I would feel so differently about him. You don't even know. Like, he looks Ben in the face and says, I'd make her purr like a little kitten. Get out of here. You know what you are. You disgusting, disgusting boy. As they slowly get closer to each other, we watch him start to like rewire Violet in real time. Not only to like need him, but to center him above everybody else in her life. He starts out by making comments about how, you know, she's really lucky that her parents care about her. She's really lucky that Ben listens to her. It must be nice to have parents that are actually there for her and around when she needs them, even if she doesn't like them that much. And then he switches that to like, you know what? Your dad kind of sucks and your mom's a bitch. I don't like either of them. I think you should listen to me instead. I think I know what's best for you. I understand you, Violet, and we can be together and you don't need them. Because he has that like charm and the jokiness to him, Violet doesn't really clock that he's isolating her. She doesn't register that he's making comments about how shitty the high school is and how bad all the other kids are, and she must be so bored and alone when she's there. She really should just stay home and hang out with him more. And when things start finally clicking for her, it's too late, and he's already got his claws all the way in. And just in terms of like where they're at in their sort of symbiotic relationship, she does get the care that she needs from him because he's so into like being a protector for her. But then at the same time, he feels like a protector when he's with her. He feels like he's needed. He feels like he's wanted. He's getting that affection from her. So when she goes to reject him and possibly pick other people, pick her family over him, that's when he starts spiraling. In the beginning, he disregards any fear that she shows towards his behavior or any concerns that she might have because he can't let go of how she makes him feel in order to see how toxic his behavior is. This rewiring thing also shows up when she continues to self-harm after they're still together and he catches her doing it again and he insists that she stops. He's like, this is so disgusting. Why are you doing this to yourself? And she's immediately like, you do it too? What are you talking about? So these like double standards come into play where there's things in the beginning of their relationship that he's either drawn to or interested in or likes about her that he very slowly starts chipping away at so that he can be in control of them. So initially the self-harming is like a bonding point for them. And then later on it becomes something where he's like, that's not okay for you to do, only I can do it. Same thing like with the coke usage when he bullies and belittles Leah for being a coke whore, but then he's actively also using it, or at least not the siren, or at least he was before he died. And the whole thing with the self-harm gets even more annoying when you remember that he has a conversation with Ben where he says that he believes the old bloodletting myth that if you cut yourself and you're bleeding, you're like releasing the bad spirits. So that's, you know, supposedly why he self-harms. That's almost like a righteous reason, where like Violet's doing it just because she's depressed. And he's not just depressed, he's like special depressed. Get out of my face. While he stays relatively steady with her, we do see him use that same hot and cold behavior that Constance used on the kids growing up on Violet. And I do think it's because that's how he grew up and the way he was raised to believe that love works and like affection works. So until he sees something else or him and Violet figure out something else together and heal together, he doesn't know what else to do. He's just doing what he's been taught. Not an excuse, just a reason for his behavior. And he only stays steady with her because Violet doesn't give him reasons to doubt her or doubt their relationship. The moment that rejection of any kind shows up, he starts faltering. Even and especially when it's just perceived rejection. Any kind of little argument that they have, anytime it seems like Violet might be leaning towards trusting somebody else over him or needing somebody else over him, it's over for Tate. He's gonna spiral immediately. We routinely see him show like pretty random bursts of aggression, immediately followed by extreme sweetness, which is slowly convincing and rewiring her brain to feel safe inside the chaos of his emotions. Yeah, he yelled at you, but then he brought you a flower and he painted it black because he knows how much you don't like normal things. He protected you from the crazy people that broke into your house because he already broke into your room to watch you sleep. That's abuse, babe. You need to run. There's a specific scene that always gets me because it is so obvious what he's doing to her. And it's like, I don't know how you can interpret that moment as anything other than the abuse cycle in real time. It's after Violet has already died and she doesn't know yet. So her parents are like, you know, we know that you're depressed, but you need to go to school. You can't keep skipping. So she gets ready one day, forces herself out of bed, and is going down the main staircase to leave. Tate grabs her from behind, puts his hand over her mouth, like snatches her around the waist, drags her back into like, not quite the kitchen, just like into the hallway away from the stairs. For no reason. There was no reason for him to grab her like that, okay? So he just snatches her. She's screaming and struggling because people broke into her house and tried to kidnap her, okay? She has trauma on this, and he doesn't care. This is the second time he's grabbed her like this and tried to spook her. So he scares the shit out of her and then turns her around so she knows it's him and immediately changes to like, oh, don't be mad at me, shh, don't yell, spend the day with me, I want you to spend the day with me, Violet, stay home. He does ultimately manipulate her into staying home with him even though Violet doesn't want to. He is also trying to keep the family from realizing what is going on with her, but it doesn't stop it from being a manipulation tactic. The way that he like scares her to get her in fight or flight mode and then is also the one to soothe her into calming down. He is literally making her central nervous system crave him. She knows that she shouldn't agree, but he's confused her so badly that at this point he's the one that she trusts most in the house. We touched on it already, but he gaslights her in the scene down in the basement after he goes way too far with Leah and Violet gets really scared for the first time. Earlier, before she brought Leah back to the house, when she goes to Tate complaining about Leah bullying her, Tate's first response to it is literally like, why don't we just kill her? I think we should just kill her if that's what you want. Since she's hurting you, let's just kill her, Violet. And Violet's immediately like, haha, very funny. We're not gonna do that. And so Tate reroutes really quickly and is like, right, of course not. Why would we? That's crazy. Who kills people at high schools? Not me. Bring her to the house and we'll scare her. So they go through with the whole plan to scare her. He goes way overboard with it, scares the shit out of Violet. She runs away from him. This is the first time he's seen her get upset with him over anything he's done. And he immediately starts trying to placate her. And he's like, why are you so upset? What's wrong? I thought you wanted this. This is what you wanted me to do. Immediately flipping it back on her and acting like everything that he just did was only because she asked him to. She agreed to scare Leah, okay? She did not agree to sick a demon baby on her and horrifically scar her face for the rest of her life. Also, the jumping on her and making it sexual, none of that was Violet's plan. Tate knows damn well he went too far. Don't play with me. When Violet runs away from him and tells him that she doesn't want to see him anymore, he immediately starts to cry and then covers that by the anger and yells after her that he didn't think she was scared of anything. Right after that is when he attacks Vivian. Can't tell me those two things aren't connected. Ben was right about the fear of rejection. The second that he he senses rejection, senses abandonment of any kind, he's gonna lash out. He's able to win her back really quickly because even though they're fighting after this moment, and it's not even really a fight, Violet is just scared of him. She's like, I don't want to be around you anymore. Whatever that was can't happen again. I don't want that in my life. So Tate leaves her alone, but is still spying on her in the house because he's always there. So he's still watching her and stuff. Then the house gets broken into, and so he's able to like pop up on her while she's running away from them, and he tells her to get them down into the basement and he'll handle it. So he doesn't let anything happen to Violet. Vivian gets a little bit more manhandled, but Violet is mostly unscathed by that night. He kills somebody with an axe and then lets the other ghost handle the other two killers. In the aftermath of this happening to them, Violet and Vivian get closer to each other, and Violet is even more drawn to Tate because now she feels like he really is protective of her. He really does want the best for her, and her dad had been out of town when this happened. So once again, playing on the fact that she wants a male figure in her life, but she doesn't have one. So now she's even more bought into the relationship with Tate, which Ben hates. He points out that Tate shouldn't have even been in the house in the middle of the night, and Tate's like, oh, yeah, well, the door was open, so I kind of broke in because I was hoping to see Violet, and Ben is like, that is illegal. You can't do that. And Violet's like, at least he was here. Thank God someone was here to help us, Dad, since you were off messing with your student again. And I do think this moment where she runs into him in the house during the break-in shows you that even though they have this distrust and she's fearful of like what he's capable of, there's just like an innate connection that they have because she knows when she runs into him, she's immediately calmer. She's immediately calmer. She immediately trusts him. She doesn't even question why he's in the house. She's just glad to see him because she knows that he's going to do everything he can to keep her safe. That to me is one of the reasons why she's able to stay with him in the end, because despite everything going on with him and all the ups and downs in his emotional state, he never makes her question how he feels about her. So while things get personal and messy and bad, it is always so 100% clear that Tate loves her. Is it healthy love? No, not in the beginning, not at all, but it is love. It's everything he can give her, he is giving her. This is also one of the times that we see Tate be violent without the suit on, which is why it's hard to blame everything he does on the suit / the house itself. I think those things absolutely make it worse. I think the baby situation 100% is influenced by the devil, which we'll get into why that's a for sure thing in a little while. He is also violent and dangerous, all on his own. I think the moment when he kills the guy in the crawl space really feels like he's possessed because it is so manic, and we very rarely see him in that like hyper manic state. He gets emotional. It's not the same thing as what happens in the crawl space. The crawl space thing, he's like so twitchy. It's almost like he's tweaking, but we didn't see him use, so you don't know for sure if that's what it is either. It is interesting that the times we see him kill post the 1994 incident, not wearing the suit, are in regards to protecting Violet in some way. From that night on, after she forgives him and lets him back in, we really see Tate opening up more and more and falling more in love with her. This is when he starts being expressive and honest and funny. They start sharing more genuine moments of connection, and they really build a friendship first before anything happens romantically. However, he's still being awful behind her back, and that's like the disconnect there is always so icky because Violet doesn't know the stuff he's saying about her to Ben, and you can be like, oh, he's just messing with Ben. He is saying the things anyway. Those things are coming out of his mouth. If a man's willing to talk about you like that, girl, you need to get away from him. You need to get away from that gremlin. They're also keeping everything secret. So while he is treating her well and being a good boyfriend, they're hiding everything from her parents. And so it's just unhealthy no matter how you look at it. Completely forgot this, my bad. After their first time together, they're laying in bed and Tate looks at her and literally says, "Did it hurt? I've heard that can happen sometimes the first time." And Violet's like, it was intense. That's because he's got soulless eyes, babe. That you ain't got to say no more. I got it. Anyway, and it's so icky because you can tell, like, the vibe and the energy of him is that he hopes it did. Like, he is always walking this really fine line with her where he wants to hurt her. He wants to scare her. It's no different than if you've seen anything to do with Ted Bundy, if you've read anything about him, the whole thing with him creepily watching his girlfriend with the flashlight. Same energy. Violet, you are not safe. You are not special. You need to run. Things go south again when the lies around her death unravel. Up to this point, Violet thought she was okay, but just really depressed. We find out through him that when she OD'd on the pills, he was obviously still spying on her a little bit. And so he saw that that had happened. He found her. He took her to the shower. He tried to help her throw up. And then he held her in the shower while she died. Instead of telling her the truth about what happened, he lets her believe that she recovered and woke up and everything's been fine. It's a wild lie because, like, what did you think was gonna happen? How long did you possibly think that that could go on? It is, again, another reason why I lean toward him having MPD, because it's a pointless lie that is never gonna work out, and all it does is like put a band-aid over the situation that they're in to keep her from freaking out so he can keep enjoying her being happy to have him around. Even though he takes care of her through it and everything, he is still controlling when she finds out about her own death. And in order to get her alone, to fake the suicide, he drugs and attacks Ben and like knocks Ben out, and Ben gets the mask off of him so he knows it's Tate, and all of his Tate suspicions get confirmed in this horrible moment, and he's, you know, passing out slowly from the freaking chloroform that Tate has shoved over his face, and he's passing out in Tate's arms, and he's like screaming for Violet. It's so horrible. And Tate leans down and goes, "The only reason I'm not killing you is for her." Which, you know, maybe that's character growth, but come on, dude. We see throughout the show that Constance withholds affection from everybody but her kids, really. She weaponizes her affection with them, but she does tell them, you know, I care about you, I love you, I support you, and then will immediately like belittle them and stuff. But the men in her life, after she's with Hugh and she kills him, she never says I love you to them. They just become pawns, and she is using them for what she wants, and she does not care about them at all. In direct contrast to that, Tate tells Violet that he loves her in almost every scene they're in after he decides that he loves her. It's very clear that he never wants Violet to question how he feels about her, and I also think it's again healing that wound of how he felt like he grew up and what he saw his parents do to each other. Now he's trying to like rewrite that and fix it moving forward with Violet. It is unfortunately still manipulation though, because he uses it as a way to get her to like calm down or trust him or be happy in a moment where she's kind of upset with him or freaking out. He'll just smooth over any little moment of disagreement by being like, girl, everything's fine. I love you. Calm down. I went back and forth on where to put the I love you scene, and I think that it fits here. So we're just gonna talk about it now. It's kind of a turning point, but I think it still speaks to the worst sides of him and the fact that he's still struggling through the turning points. So maybe we'll touch on it again later on. I don't know, guys. Well, there's so many things. And part of the problem with Tate is that he'll take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back at the same time. Sometimes in the same scene, he'll do something and you're like, oh my God, that was growth. And then he will immediately backpedal into the bad place. So what happens with the I love you is he writes it on the chalkboard first, and that is part of the reason why she ODs and hurts herself, because it overwhelms her in the midst of everything else going on. So she knows that probably she loves him. They haven't said it yet. She finds out about his past and the truth of all of that. The fact that he's dead, like, it's just very overwhelming. All of it is too much. She dies. And then in the aftermath of that, he knows something is wrong with her. Obviously, he knows she's dead, but the audience and Violet herself just think she's unwell. Like, her depression is just really bad. And so Tate comes to her and he gives her this whole speech where he's like, I know something's wrong with you. Okay. You haven't told me, you haven't said it, but I know, I can feel it, that something is wrong with you. And that, I can't tell you how much that bothers me, because it really speaks to his narcissism. Because not only does he say, I know something's wrong with you, I'm aware that something is wrong with you. He goes, it's me, isn't it? I did the thing. I upset you in some way, and you're just not telling me what I did. And it's like, buddy, she's not your mom. Why would that be the truth of the situation? Oh my God. But he just can't help it. That's like where his brain goes. So he does this whole monologue where he's like, I know I've upset you in some way. And you know, if that's the case, I'll leave you alone. I'll leave you alone. And you know why I'll leave you alone, Violet? Because I care about your feelings more than my own. And I've never felt like that before. And that's what I'm saying about the like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. Because it's like, buddy, don't assume it's about you. She's got so much shit going on. And matter of fact, she's told you about the shit going on in her life. And you're still standing there in front of her going, I know it's my fault. I know I did it, baby. Stand the fuck up. It's not just you, okay? She's got a lot of shit going on. You are part of the problem, very tiny part of the problem. And then the whole thing with his response to her being upset, being like, I'll just leave. I'll just leave because I know you don't really like me. I know that you must hate me. It's just so irritating. I'm like, dude, she adores you. That's the problem. That's actually the problem, is she loves you so fucking much and you're an idiot and a monster. Kind of. You kind of suck right now. So you need to stay in therapy and you need to get better. And also you should encourage her to go to therapy. And also you shouldn't have lied about her death. I'm just saying, maybe we stop lying. We start telling her the truth and we let her, you know, make peace with the fact that she's a ghost. After Violet finds out that she's dead, her depression gets worse, and Tate doesn't handle that super well. He gets clingier, trying to fix it by like pushing more affection onto her, and then when that doesn't work and he continues to feel like she's slowly rejecting him or like soft breaking up with him, however you want to look at it, he finally reaches like a breaking point and tells her that he's feeling that way, and Violet is so unwell that she can't even really comfort him. Like, she can't tell him that he's wrong about how she's feeling and how she's treating him, because he's right. She is pulling away from him, but it has nothing to really do with him. And I think that again speaks to his narcissistic side and like how he views everything she does as being connected to him. Like, if she's upset, he must have done something. If she's tired, he must have done something. It's like, dude, she's depressed. Your girlfriend has depression just like you. Is she making you depressed or is it your brain? Get it together. What finally brings Violet back into herself is the like tipping point in their relationship together, right towards the end of the show, when she finds out the truth about what he did to Vivian. That's absolutely the final straw for her. She has put up with, you know, knowing he hurt people in his past, believing that he's different now, and the boy that she met and fell in love with has been different this whole time, only to learn that within a few weeks of them knowing each other, he assaulted her mom and got her pregnant. And now Vivian has given birth to the baby and it killed her. Hello? So finally, for the first time in months, she's able to like feel anger, and she goes up to him in their room and confronts him about it and triggers a full collapse in him. He's too panicked by the sudden rejection to really like have a conversation with her about it. Also, there's nothing to say, and he's still avoiding all of it. So while she is confronting him and listing all of the things that he did, he is crying and saying to her like, why would I do that? Because he has pushed all of it away for so long that he can't even fathom that that really happened. They end up just screaming at each other because she's trying to get rid of him finally because she doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and he's yelling at her that she's everything to him and he can't exist without her. Now, typically, somebody with MPD would like revert back to their old self after a collapse. They would maybe even like retaliate or punish her for like daring to leave him like this. But Tate was right when he said that being with her has changed him. Is he perfect? No, not by any means. But he has actively been trying to change and trying to be different. So when she pushes him away this time, he makes himself let her go because he ultimately knows that she's better off without him. This is the fear that he's had the whole time, right? Because he knows that he's not a good person. He knows that he's not a healthy person to be with. And Violet is good. She's all the things that he's always wanted to be. Now that the fact's been proven true that she's better off without him, it hurts. And he is absolutely in the throes of like a full collapse, full shame spiral, but he lets her go. His fixation does linger. He goes so far as to attempt to kill the teenage son of the next family that moves in so that she can have somebody nice to be with. And Violet is like, I don't want somebody nice. I don't want anything but you. Why is that so hard for you to understand? I wanted you. And that just really devastates him. And that's the moment where they finally get to have like an actual goodbye.
You told me to go away.
Yeah. But I never said goodbye.
Now that we've looked at all the bad stuff, I really want to talk about a few moments of like key points of change in their relationship that make it clear to me that Tate's right when he says that being with her has changed him, because we're actually seeing his behavior shift. That being said though, I do think it's important to remember that a big reason why they work out is because they're kind of forced to. Tate can only run so far from all of this. So what I mentioned before about him, you know, in real life, he probably would have just reverted back to his old ways. He could do that in this situation. He could go after Hayden because she's like the younger ghost that Ben cheated on Vivian with. Long story, she dies on the property too. And so she's technically there, and he could go run off with her because she was an option and she liked him. But he doesn't do that. He sits in the discomfort of everything that went wrong with him and Violet, and he makes the decision to try to keep getting better. So let's look at those moments where we start to see him shifting in real time. I think the biggest one, and probably the most obvious, is when it's finally revealed that he genuinely tried to save her life when she OD'd. This would have been a freaking goldmine situation for the start of season Tate. You're telling me that the girl that he has hyperfixated on, that he wants more than anything in the world, is about to die in the house and her ghost will be stuck with him forever and she'll never be able to leave? She can't leave him when he ultimately messes up and does something wrong? She can't go find somebody else to fall in love with that's more normal and easy to love than he is? That would have been everything he wants and more. But instead of being excited about the fact that he could potentially get to keep her, Tate freaks out. He is distraught and does everything in his power to keep her alive. This is really the first time that we see him actively go against the selfish parts of his nature that he has shown us time and time again. Then there's the moment where they're talking about another fight with her parents, and she says to Tate, "God, I'm so stupid and naive sometimes." Now, he has been treating her like she's stupid and naive, okay? He has been nice to her, yes, but he's been manipulating her this whole time. So if he was still acting out of those like selfish, manipulative desires, this would have been a perfect moment for him to be like, yeah, you are, but that's okay, Violet, because I'm here and I'm looking after you. But instead, we see like an immediate look of horror go over his face, and it's like he clocks for the first time what has been happening to her and how she is slowly losing her self-confidence. And this confusion that he's been adding to her life has been affecting her, and he can see it now for the first time all at once. It's like it hits him what's been going on. And his response is, no, you're not stupid. Don't ever say that again. It's kind of similar to the moment where he tries to like get her to stop self-harming because now all of a sudden he thinks it's this stupid thing that she's doing and it's so gross and she needs to stop for him. Now in this moment, he is genuinely trying to get her to believe that she's not dumb. Instead of being threatened by her goodness, he's starting to remember it for the strength that it is, because again, this is why he was drawn to her in the beginning. This is why he wanted to be with her. They just have this like innate urge to strip people of the things that they initially wanted. It's almost like they want to prove that they can. Like he sees Violet as this good, awesome thing, but he knows that he's bad enough to corrupt her into also being bad. And if he works hard enough, it'll happen. Now it's like he's frantically trying to backpedal because he realizes that he wants her to stay that way. That's why he's in love with her. We talked about how it's really bad that he lies about her being dead and doesn't tell her the truth about that because he's trying to control when she finds out about it. That's bad. However, there's this really small moment inside the scene where he's trying to convince her to Romeo and Juliet themselves together before her parents realize that she's dead. He's trying to fabricate their death so that it feels like her choice, even though she already made the choice to take the pills. This is his version of her choice. But while she is freaking out and listening to him tell her this plan, she starts to realize, okay, I have to get away from him. And in an effort to do that, she says, okay, hold on. Can't we do it in the bath? And his first reaction is to get angry that she's not just immediately agreeing and going along with what he says. We see it on his face. He gets angry. And then he self-regulates. For the first time, really. Like, this is shit he doesn't do normally, but he gets angry and then he takes a breath and literally like his shoulders drop and he relaxes in the moment and is like, okay, yes, if that's what you want to do, we can do that. We just need to hurry. I actually can't stress enough how big of a moment that is, considering his behavior up until this point. And the fact that they're in a high pressure situation right now. Violet's parents are like right on the verge of figuring out what happened. Violet herself is right on the verge of figuring out what happened. So he is in like critical red alert mode and he still lets her make the decision. He is so controlling, just like Constance. It's just that he's sneakier with it than she is. So the fact that in this moment, not only is he willing to see it from her point of view, recognize that that's what she needs to feel calmer and ultimately go along with it, and then also agree in a calm, rational manner without making it like a belittling moment or like being annoyed with her in any way. He just reiterates, we have to be quick. Like, okay, character development. Minuscule, but I see you. And then of course, the way he handles the collapse itself does really speak to character growth. Start of the show Tate, I fear, would have immediately run off to Hayden for supply because that Tate didn't care about Violet. That Tate didn't care about being better for himself or for her or for their relationship. He just wanted the validation that he's been looking for this whole time.
I also forgot that the scene with Hayden where she flirts with him and she's basically propositioning him to be like, just come be with me, it'll be easier, you don't have to worry about stupid Violet anymore. And he's really adamant on like, absolutely not, get away from me, no, I don't want anything to do with you. In that scene, he also starts saying things like, I'm tired of hurting people, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to live like this anymore. So it really is such a turning point for him where he is starting, it's such a process. It's such a process for narcs, like avoidance of any kind, to start accepting accountability. It really comes in waves, I fear, and they have to like slowly open themselves up to the idea. But I love the way they wrote Tate because you can like see it. You can see like his brain shifting and being like, this is bad. Like, I'm a bad person and I have to fix this because Violet's gonna leave me. And he's right. He's so right, bro. She is gonna leave your ass.
Hayden enabled him. She didn't ask for change, she didn't ask for growth, she didn't care about anything but maybe hooking up with him whenever he was bored. And instead of going after that, which would have been easy supply for him to get, he just sits and stays with the discomfort and waits for Violet to forgive him. More than that, he continues working on himself while she's not around to watch. Another really important scene is right at the very end where Tate talks to Ben and he verbally admits to everything. This is the first time that he's ever just full stop listed out his crimes and said everything that he did and admitted to himself and us that he knows it was wrong. He's aware that he did it and he's trying to figure out how to live with it now. He confirms that he knows that he can't be magically forgiven, but he's terrified of ending up alone. So while he knows that Violet isn't going to talk to him anymore, he asks Ben if he can keep seeing him as a therapist and trying to work through things with him. The fact that he can admit it finally is really huge, and then the fact that he doesn't force himself back into Violet's life to like insist she forgive him because he's starting to come to these realizations and changes is also really important. The end of season 1 ends with Tate and Violet separated through the glass door. He's watching her with her family on Christmas, decorating the house, enjoying her time away from him. He's stuck outside of everything with Hayden because Ben has kicked Hayden out as as well. So the two of them are basically like in ghost exile inside the house. And Hayden says to him, like, she's never gonna forgive you. You need to just move on and get over it. Tate insists that he doesn't care how long it takes, he'll wait. They literally have forever for him to wait for her, and he plans on doing just that. Fast forward to season 8, the son that Tate had with Vivian, who ends up being the freaking Antichrist. And there's a lot of lore around Michael and the end of the world and everything. Basically, it boils down to confirmation that the house was evil, the devil was connected to the house, the devil was possessing people in the house and toying with them and stuff. All of the badness and the evil in the house went into Michael when he was born. Now, I don't know if I believe that fully. Okay, I think that there was still some evil in the house after the baby was born. I think most of it went into the baby, but I don't think all of it did. And I don't think that Tate wasn't screwed up before the house. So in doing some research, the Wikipedia page literally says, like, now all the badness has been taken out of Tate and he's a good, sweet boy again, just like he was when Violet met him. And I'm like, is the good sweet boy in the room with us? Like, no, there were still things wrong with him, okay? And I don't think blaming everything on the house, it just negates the fact that he was unwell. He was so deeply unwell. Don't talk to me about him being good and sweet and perfect and ignore the fact that he did all these horrible things before the house took over. But it has been several years since we saw them in Murder House. Violet is still not speaking to him. She is holding up that veil boundary between the two of them and refusing to acknowledge him inside the house. He is trying to get her attention. We get some flashbacky moments of him following her through the house, and he can see her, so he's torturing himself by like yelling at her through the void and being like, Violet, please, please just talk to me. You're all I want. Just talk to me. And she just refuses. And so this is an interesting thing because yes, he's maintaining the boundary, but he's only maintaining the boundary because she has him blocked off. I do not think he would be maintaining it if he had access to her. I think he absolutely would be trying to instigate conversations, and then she would be saying, Tate, you need to go away. But thankfully, the fact that she can put the veil up between them means he can't get to her, and so she's able to exist dealing with her own stuff and working through her own stuff, knowing that he's not doing great either, but it's not in her face. She doesn't have to look at him while he's doing it. He is still going to therapy with Ben and having conversations with him and trying to work through things with him. And in a lot of ways, he is doing a lot better when we meet him, but I still think that he is operating from this place of being fixated on Violet and being fixated on earning her forgiveness. So while he is trying to lean into being a better person, it's still coming from this place of, if I do this, maybe Violet will love me again. And you can kind of decide how you feel about that on your own. I don't think it's inherently a negative. He does ultimately end up saving Vivian's life though, because there's a mess with Michael and Vivian almost dies in connection to that. And Tate is the one that saves her. Violet doesn't know about that. Madison, one of the witches from Coven, comes to the house and meets Violet and is able to tell her the truth about what's happened. So she confirms that Tate is the one that saved her. And Violet is just so emotionally wrecked by all of this because this whole time they've been apart, Violet still loves him. She loved him when she said goodbye to him. And they do a lot with the storytelling here to sort of convince the audience that what happened in season 1 between Tate and Vivian wasn't actually that bad, because even Vivian herself says that it wasn't actually Tate that night. It was his body, and like that's enough for me, okay? And also, it was his choice to put the suit on and attack her. Did the house influence him? Sure. But he made that decision because he wanted to get Nora a baby, and I'm not going to forget about that just because the house possessed him once the suit was on. But at the end of the day, it's Violet's decision. She can do what she wants. She's a grown 16-year-old ghost. Madison confirms that he is the one that saved Vivian, and Violet is like, he's a monster. You can't imagine what it's like to know all the horrible things he's done. And then she trails off, and Madison is like, and still be in love with him? And Violet just cries because it's true. But this moment with Madison is what ultimately pushes them back together. And Violet realizes that it's worth it to her to take the risk of letting him back in, especially now that she knows for sure that he has been doing all these things to try to get better for her. And so Madison leaves and Violet's crying and she stands up and she's just like, Tate? and he comes sprinting down the staircase, like immediately reappears to her. And the first thing he says to her is, "I'm so sorry for everything." And the look on her face, like the softness that comes back into her expression when he says that is just so lovely to see. And she says, "I know." And then they embrace, and we're led to believe that they get back together. I know that a lot of people get really hung up on the fact that like technically the timeline like resets, and so in theory like their reunion gets rewound and doesn't actually end up happening. However, we're also told that ghosts in general like don't exist in the same timeline, or like aren't beholden to time the way that mortals are. So I choose to believe that nothing affected the spirits. They're back together in my book, guys. And as twisted and dark and sad as their relationship is, I think there's a lot of beauty in the way that they come back together. Because he doesn't get to just sweep back in. He doesn't get to avoid the accountability of it. We have to see him grow and change and actively take steps to be better before Violet is willing to accept him back into her life and try again. They also don't kiss, which is very important to me because it doesn't immediately go back to exactly the way it was when they broke up. And there's just something really like sweet, and it's almost like more intimate the way they're like intensely looking into each other's eyes and like embracing in the silhouette of the door. It's one of my favorite shots from anything ever, even with that fuck ass wig they got Evan in. It's just really nice to see them together again and to know that they genuinely have a chance at being happy. Because like I said way back in the very beginning, so often this dynamic is only toxic. There's like no genuineness to it. There's no real love involved. It's just toxicity, and it's just like the same fight over and over again. They never break the cycle. And I feel like Tate and Violet break the cycle, which I just fucking love to see. I think that's everything I have to say right now. Editing Sarah will probably make an appearance, but I feel like I've gotten it all off my chest. I could just go on and on and on about these guys, honestly. It just never stops in my brain. They're one of my favorite couples. I think I'm verging on 400 songs in the playlist I have for them right now. I'll link it down below. It'll be in the description if you guys want to check it out. I'm really proud of it. It's really fun. Let me know how you feel about them down below. Have your thoughts on them changed over the years? Because I know mine have. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!